Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com and The Daily joins me over the last 24 hours. Critical events in China, in Beijing, at the U.S. Embassy. A man by the name of Chen, blind activist, attorney, self-taught, in the U.S. Embassy, having sought sanctuary over these last days, left the U.S. Embassy in companionship with American officials, driven to a Chinese hospital where he is right now receiving care. Those facts were established. There is much to determine, however, what Mr. Chen believed to be true when he was in the American embassy, when he was making his decision to leave American protection and return to the People's Republic of China, where over these last 5-6 years, he and his family and his friends have been persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party. And over these last days, Mr. Chen, through a YouTube that he created and sent to the world, accused officials in the Chinese Communist Party in his region of abuse, of sadism, of brutality. And he was appealing to the second most powerful man in China, Wen Jiabao, to investigate. Those facts were fixed. Now, what did Mr. Chen know before he left the American embassy? Gordon, we're joined by Bob Fu, president of the United States-based China Aid Association. Mr. Fu, a very good evening to you. You're quoted all day in the media around the world, but you have had an opportunity to speak with Chen, Mr. Chen, in these last 90 minutes, 2 hours, and you have learned about what he knew in the American embassy and what he knows now and what he wants to happen. Good evening to you, Bob. What did Mr. Chen tell you about his decision to leave the American embassy?
Yes, John. This is a man pretty much had been cut off from any outside communication information for the past 7 years, with the 4 years and 3 months in imprisonment and another almost 2 years of continuous torture and brutal treatment. And when he walked into the U.S. Embassy, he does want to seek a time of sanctuary and rest. And he was not fully aware of what really happened. But to the Chinese citizen, usually asylum almost equal to treason. So he specifically did tell the U.S. officials he's not seeking asylum, but he's seeking protection, and he felt he was haunted and could be kidnapped, and so that involved the U.S. diplomacy. The Assistant Secretary Kurt Campbell then went to China ahead of the Secretary Clinton's visit and led the negotiation with China, with some agreements with the Chinese government. And but one important fact after talking with Mr. Chen that I was able to clarify was what kind of message did he receive from the U.S. official before he walked out of the U.S. Embassy. And I was told by Mr. Chen that the U.S. official basically told him that the Chinese government asked the U.S. official to pass a message to him. And he was told if he did not walk out of the U.S. Embassy today, yesterday Beijing time, and he will not be able to have any family reunification with his wife and 2 children anymore, and they will be returned back to their hometown, namely their home prison. And Mr. Chen said he felt extremely and extraordinary pressure and felt so painful, and he just at the last minute, and he felt the only choice if he wants to see his wife and children and is to go out of the U.S. Embassy and not chose to be in the U.S. Embassy.
Bob, let me just sort of recap this because you mentioned a number of critical things. And the most important, I think, is that the U.S. government officials relayed threats made by the Chinese government to Chen Guangcheng yesterday. That's right. Is that right?
Well, the U.S. government, according to the State Department and the senior officials who briefed me, didn't feel that was a threat. So it's a reinterpretation of those sentences I just mentioned. And they feel they have reached agreement with the framework to get Chen back to Chinese society and to go to a law university to study law and etc.
It would seem to me, Bob, that what was relayed by the U.S. government officials, whether you call it a threat or not, would seem to be completely inconsistent with the assurances that the Chinese government had worked out with the United States. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely right. To anybody who receives that kind of language, I mean, that is immediate 911 should be called. And let alone to let this poor guy and who made that daring walking and still with wounded leg and walked out of for the protection and left wife and children. When I called, they were left alone without any U.S. embassy or any diplomatic presence. And at 9 o'clock, according to one of my best friends who called them last night, the first night in the hospital, their 6-year-old daughter was crying because of the starvation. There's no food was even served to them. And it only after somebody called the embassy and from outside, and the embassy apparently called the hospital and get them some food, their first dinner after he walked out of the embassy.
John?
Bob, it's morning in Beijing. You talked with Mr. Chen within these last 90 minutes. Right now, does he feel threatened right now? Does he feel threatened for his family right now?
He is absolutely feel very scared. And he was crying when I was calling him and talking with him. And he kept telling me, please help. I want to come to America. I want to bring my family to the U.S. And that's his urgent and desperate plea right now.
Is he in communication with the American embassy in any fashion?
I did ask that at least last night. He said when I asked him, is there a 24-hour cell phone number from the U.S. Embassy that you can call when you have some urgent matters? He said he did call. I don't know when, but he said nobody answers. Just left a message or something like that.
Bob, you spoke with him by telephone. You're calling a mobile phone. Is he on a mobile phone or a landline when he talks to you?
He is on a mobile phone, and I actually videotaped that conversation.
Right. Can we believe that the Chinese authorities listened to your conversation with Mr. Chen?
I think that's a reasonable belief.
And at this point, Bob, if Mr. Chen is left into the embrace of the Chinese government, do you believe he will be safe? Do you believe his family is safe, or is he at risk?
Himself and his family are absolutely in danger, and his wife was not even allowed to just walk out of the house, the room, and his wife was tied on a chair before she was taken to Beijing for this meeting, and in an interrogation center, and the interrogator. And with some sort of torture method, torture equipment, basically beat her and told her, if your husband, if Chen Guangcheng, did not walk out of the U.S. protection, we will kill you.
Bob, this is Bob Fu of the president of the United States-based China AIDS Association. He's based in Texas. Bob, did the Ambassador Locke know that Chen believed his family was under threat? Did he know that when he left the embassy, Chen believed that if he didn't leave the embassy, his family was in threat? Did the ambassador know?
I'm not aware how much communication Ambassador Locke with Mr. Chen, except he was described by the U.S. Officials to me that Ambassador Locke asked him one question 3 times repeatedly according to so-called protocol and said, are you willing to go, or do you want to go, walk out of the U.S. Embassy? And that was the version by the administration officials so far. And I don't know how much information Ambassador Locke knows or shared with him, or even whether ask a question, said, could we bring your family to the embassy to have the family reunion and you can have a discussion for your future, rather than move him to the Chinese government security guarded hospital. And right now that room became another prison.
John, this is the critical failure of American diplomacy. When the United States relayed what the Chinese government said, whether you call it a threat or not, the United States should have talked to China in the strictest terms possible, because clearly that threat from the Chinese government was completely inconsistent with everything the United States negotiated in those previous 2 days.
Final question, Bob. Did Mr. Chen know in the American embassy that his wife was being brutalized? Did he know that she was tied up? Did he know that she had been threatened with torture? Did he know that in the American embassy?
Apparently, he was not informed. He was not aware.
He's learned that since he got to the hospital then. His wife has told him that now.
That's right. But when that, whether you call it a threat or not, when that kind of language was transferred through the U.S. official to him, his heart was already heavy and heavy and heavy. He said, he knew because what that meant. He knew, that what the past 17 months looked like in that hellish home prison. And what does it mean to return make your wife and two children return to your home, your village?
And to your knowledge, Bob, Mr. Chen is telling this to everyone who calls him, all the news organizations. He's telling everybody.
I think he has. He already at least told the CNN or the AP.
Right. Bob Fu, president of the United States-based China Aid Association, within 90 minutes of speaking to Mr. Chen in a hospital. The man himself. The next series of questions has to be answered by the American officials at the U.S. Embassy. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com and The Daily. I'm John Batchelor.